Right, Dom, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, it seems like I'm not been away in the last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you came and bring the fire, didn't you, a couple of weeks ago, and we had a good chat about health, and you were telling me about yourself, which I'm looking forward to diving into and understanding more about. And I think our audience are going to be quite intrigued by what they hear. So, for anyone that's been onto your website, you'll see that you were diagnosed with Lyme disease a few years ago. Was that where your kind of health journey or interest in health began? Was it very personal? Were you interested previous to that?
Previously, I mean, I did a lot of when I was a kid. I did a lot of weights and stuff like that. So I suppose part of weight training and playing sport and things, you were conscious of eating right and what have you, taking additional supplements and things like that. But it was only really in 2006 when I became ill. I took a real conscious sort of interest in my own health.
Well, let's dive into Lyme disease and that diagnosis you mentioned there in 2006, because Lyme disease is something that I think most people will have heard of, but won't necessarily understand exactly what it is. So what was for people that have heard of it but don't know what it is, what exactly is Lyme disease to begin with?
Well, I suppose there's a conventional way and there's what you class as an unconventional explanation. The conventional explanation is you get bitten by an infected tick, and that creates basically an autoimmune storm, let's call it, in the system, creating many different types of symptoms, from arthritis to cardiological issues to neurological issues to digestive problems, etc. And all these can be going on at the same time, which basically debilitates people. And also the levels of suffering are different from person to person. Some people might feel a bit crappy for a couple of weeks. Some people it goes on for decades.
Wow.
Whether they're treated or not. The damage can affect your nervous system, so your nervous system can become unrepairable, if you like. So it's just a matter of managing it, or some people never leave the house.
Wow. You know, when you get diagnosed with it, you mentioned it, the severity of it varies. Are you in control of that? So as in,
No.
like, how quickly you're diagnosed, what you do when you're diagnosed, or is it just literally it affects everybody differently?
It affects everybody differently, but I mean, I wasn't diagnosed in 2006. I came back from Thailand. Me and my wife were bitten to shreds by mosquitoes, so we're presuming it came from mosquitoes, not ticks. But anyway, and with what we know about mosquitoes, what they're doing with mosquitoes, genetically modifying them now, there's a high probability that these were some kind of weaponized item. That's the unconventional explanation, I suppose, the Bill Gates mosquitoes. I suppose your question, I've not answered that question really, have I? But I was diagnosed in 2017. So I had 11 years of suffering. So when I initially went to the doctors, suffering from brain fog, dizziness, headaches, respiratory issues. They gave me blood tests and they said that my kidneys were failing, all sorts of different things. And I had another blood test and they said, no, your kidneys are all right. And that's why this sort of illness is very difficult to detect, because the NHS is reluctant to test anybody for this illness. Doctors aren't trained or anything like that, because it shows us multiple different symptoms.
Right.
For instance, chronic fatigue syndrome is a prime example. We suffered with, me and my wife have got Lyme disease, not just myself. We suffered with chronic fatigue, and people say to me, oh, I've been fatigued, I know what that's like. It's not the same thing. I'm not saying everybody's worse, mine's worse than anybody else's, but the chronic fatigue is like your whole energy has just been taken out of your life, like a balloon going down, and you've got nothing left. You can't even get up. It's a strange feeling. Very strange feeling. And these are just one of the symptoms. And along with that then comes anxiety, and with a lot of people, mental issues as well, depression and things like that. And I'm sure I suffered with a lot of that. But when I went to the doctors, they gave me antibiotics, not thinking it was a tick, but because I was showing respiratory conditions. And when those didn't work and the blood tests didn't come back with anything, all of a sudden then it turned after about a year that it was all in my head. I was making this up. Because that's what fit young men do. They make these things up. I had a business with 70 or 80 staff at that point. That's what people like you're an energetic guy. That's what we all do, don't we? We just say, do you know what? I feel like an 80-year-old today, so I'm going to give in. So as soon as the doctor started palming me off and giving me a prescription for antidepressants, I threw them in the bin. I didn't take one of them. I had no intention of taking them. I was, in a way, fortunate, if that's a proper, if that's a good way of explaining it. In the early 2000s, I started studying psychology with a lady in Huddersfield who was like a spiritual. She was into spirituality, but she was also a clinical psychologist and a clinical hypnotist as well. And I was interested in why I was doing certain things in my own life, making decisions. And so I had a rudimentary understanding of psychology, and I knew I wasn't depressed. I think if I hadn't been learning this, I was going every week to learn this information. And I suppose when your father talks about his awakening, I was going through a similar process around the early 2000 mark. So I think that helped me understand that the doctors were basically lying to me.
Yeah. Well, the doctors want to put you in a box and they want you in and out very quickly. So what you mentioned there about them being very reluctant to look at things like this is because that you're a bit of an odd case in the sense of it's not going to take 30 seconds to resolve. It might need different things doing. And obviously they don't want that. They're in there and, I've been in the doctors in the past 30 seconds and they're trying to give you antibiotics. That's what they know how to do. They don't actually understand what they're doing. No. So for anyone that's watching that maybe is sat there going, I have a few of these symptoms that you're describing and I don't really have any answers. Is Lyme disease something that is pretty obvious, or is it something that can be quite undetected? So there'll be people that are going about their lives, sat watching this or at work or driving the car today that may be suffering from this without knowing, and they're putting it down to other causes.
Well, I'll start by saying that the NHS's testing, like we had during 2020, they're using a similar sort of test. So you can hazard a guess that the test doesn't work correctly, the PCR test that they initially use. So if you fail that test, then you're just ignored, if you like. You're told it's all in your head. If that test comes back positive for Borrelia, then you're sent for another test, a second test. And all these tests, by the way, are sent to Porton Down, which already rings alarm bells in my head. I don't know about yourself.
Where they send there? That's a really strange one to send them to.
Well, especially when you look at the history of Borrelia and going back into the 1940s, the Americans during Operation Paperclip brought over all the German scientists. Yeah. Well, some of these scientists, one called Erich Traub, he was taken to Fort Detrick, and he was experimenting with ticks during World War II, dropping them on Russian civilians and Russian livestock, because what they wanted to do was kill the livestock with these infected biological weapons. But they found that they were actually infecting the civilians. So when the Americans found out about this, they dragged all these scientists over to America and started experimenting themselves. And they were dropping hundreds of thousands of ticks all over Europe and all over America with biological grade weapons inside them as vectors to bite people, basically. And there was an island. Yeah. So, and that's the unconventional story, Jaymie.
For people watching around the world that haven't heard of Porton Down is the UK chemical weapons kind of sanctuary, if you like.
Level 4 lab. Yeah.
It's a level 4 lab. Yeah. It's essentially where a lot of things have come out of and a lot of things go into. Probably just down the road from Salisbury, ironically, where that whole Novichok ski pole scandal.
It's strange that, and Chris Whitty was running the same thing. He ran the Novichok thing. But anyway, that's another story. But it is. But for people who think I'm being nuts by saying that our own government would drop these things on us, during World War II and up to 1989, there was an operation running called Operation Cauldron. And within Operation Cauldron, there were hundreds of different operations where they were dropping zinc cadmium and a variant of anthrax up the length and breadth of Great Britain, and in America it was happening at the same time, called the Large Area Particle Trials, where they were basically dropping these biological weapons, supposedly to protect us from the Russian, well, initially the Nazis doing it, and then it became the Cold War, the Russians doing it to us. And they were dropping them in the London Underground and monitoring who were off sick type of the week after. So these things have been going on for years. So I know your listeners are educated and will understand that our own government isn't to be trusted. But it wouldn't be surprising then that if they're infecting ticks with modified bacteria to act as a weapon.
Oh, 100%. I mean, one of the first rabbit holes people go down when they start questioning the world is chemtrails. And one of the biggest questions has always been, what is in these things? You hear the word chemtrail, but what does that mean? Chemicals in what context? What chemicals? What are they doing? What are they designed to do? We've seen an explosion in respiratory-related illnesses over the last few years, and a number of different health problems. People's sort of toxic load is increased massively for a number of reasons, not just chemtrails. Obviously, there's a lot more toxins and chemicals in the environment and in our clothing and in domestic house products and in food and all that than there was. But it's certainly something to look at, because I think what you mentioned there about, Bill Gates attacking Bill Gates mosquitoes, you could listen to that off the cuff and say that sounds crazy. But then you've only got to look and listen to what Bill Gates has actually said. Depopulation, we need that. We can depopulate the world through vaccines, while he's giving vaccines out on the surface to try and help people. And it's like, well, those two statements completely contradict each other. And also, this push towards eating more bugs. And you mentioned there about the types of infections that mosquitoes are having and giving to human beings, which again is quite new compared to history. All of a sudden it doesn't sound quite so crazy. It makes a lot of sense of what we're seeing around us.
Well, anybody, again, I'll go back to your dad. He always says, join the dots. If you can't join those dots, which are quite simple dot to dots, if you ask me, a child could join them. When we were speaking to Gareth, our kids can see these things. So, but yet grown adults can't either ignore it or can't see it and just go along with it for some reason. They're producing millions of mosquitoes and dropping them all over. I think was it Florida? And all of a sudden people were getting malaria.
Yeah.
There's certain areas in the world where they're dropping these things. When they jab people, all of a sudden people get the illness that they were jabbed supposedly to protect them from. The stupidity of human beings just boggles my mind sometimes, but that's probably for another day. But if you were going to invent a weapon that debilitated people over a period of time, which, as we know, the cabals that run this place have got long-term plans. This could have started when I was a kid, and it culminated when my immune system was attacked by those mosquitoes back in 2006, and that brought this illness out. I could have been carrying this for decades, because that's another thing people find that, and some people can test positive for Borrelia but show no symptoms at all. So, like I said, everybody's different. Everybody is different. And I know some people, if we get onto the germ versus terrain theory argument, my view on that one is that, we can't see viruses under a microscope. I'm on side with that one. But once you get biological weapons involved, all bets are off, really. Because it doesn't really matter if your terrain's amazing. If something's designed to destroy it, then it doesn't make any difference, really.
No. And I think that's taken me down a massive rabbit hole recently. So I started watching a health guy in America called Gary Brecker a couple of years ago. And I've seen a lot recently where he's been talking to various different, well-known people, Grant Cardone, like entrepreneurs and someone like that, about this genetic test. Well, you get a genetic test done, and this is the sales pitch anyway. You get a genetic test done, and it then allows them to put together like a supplement vitamin sachet that arrives every month that is specifically tailored to your body, your genetics, your DNA, so that there's no guesswork of should I take vitamin D3, should I take cod liver oil? It's specifically for you. And I remember when I read that, I thought, right, okay, that's the sales pitch. And then, I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on another show, do you remember the last James Bond film with Remy, the guy that played Freddie Mercury? Yeah, him. Well, the whole concept of that film, wasn't there, that they've created this lab that can create a specific enzyme that will only kill one person. So you can set it off in a room full of people, and it would only kill the person who it was designed to because it was attached to their DNA. So with that conspiratorial mind, I then looked at this genetic test that's being pushed and thought, okay, they can give you all the supplements and vitamins that help your body, great. But they also know every single weakness you have. They also know you're giving them your DNA. You're literally giving them voluntarily your DNA. So for the supposed sales pitch and beneficial side of that, you're also allowing then the more nefarious side to create products that could do exactly what happens in that Bond film. And we've all talked about preemptive programming, and that concept coming out in that film could well be a reality. In fact, it almost certainly is.
I can't agree more. I mean, if you think about it from a war perspective, when the so-called Allies invaded Iraq, over a period of, from the first Iraq war to the second Iraq war, they literally bombed the hell out of them. I think there were 800 bombing missions, and there were sort of sanctions on Iraq, so people were going hungry, they were out medical supplies, etc., etc. And then when they actually physically attacked Iraq, they bombed the communication lines, which you could say is like your nervous system. They poisoned the water, which you could say was what we're getting. They destroyed the media centres, which could be construed as your brain. It's a very similar attack on the human body as what it is in a war. And as individuals, we're subject to propaganda, which they use against Iraq. We're all subject to all these attacks on us constantly, every second of every day, that we actually class as leisure activities or enjoyment. But if anybody goes on holiday, going through the British airports, for instance, it is like coming in and out of prison. If anybody's gone and visited anybody who's actually been inside at any point, it is exactly the same as coming in and out, and you treat exactly the same as well. Yeah, like you're a criminal.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so that first part of that enjoyment, that going on holiday, is spoilt straight away. And so everything we do is to affect our health, isn't it? Going back to your James Bond analogy.
Not to mention all the radiation that you're exposed to going through those full body scanners and so on. So a thing that I find interesting about what we've spoken about, and about Lyme disease in particular, to do with this subject, is you mentioned the different analogies there to do with the different attacks on Iraq and attacking different aspects of the body. Well, we know during war what they try and do is break people's spirit. They try and beat people down. They try and really get you to the point that you just give up. With a disease like Lyme disease, that's not necessarily a disease that you've got 3 weeks to live, off you go, and it's all very. It's a debilitating disease that, as you mentioned there, can affect your life a lot, not so much, and it can be very prolonged. And I suppose is it the type of thing that would have spates where it would spike as well, where it might be worse for a few months and then it might calm down.
Yep.
That kind of, to me, ties into that concept of war there as well, where you're breaking somebody, because I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but with something like this, it's quite difficult to plan, because you don't know how you're going to feel tomorrow. You don't know how you're going to feel next week. You can't necessarily sign yourself up for something, because you might feel great today, but a couple of weeks later you might not. And whether that, that could apply that to your job, to your personal life, to family, all of those things. It must be difficult. And I wonder if that's why, if what we're saying and what you've pointed out is correct, that this is a disease or something that's being deliberately spread around. That's why they've chosen that particular one, because we've spoken in the past at the channel about the Fabian Society, in particular the secret society, the Fabian Society, and how their kind of modus operandi was to weaken an enemy consistently over time, to the point that you just walk in and take over. Because who do you want to have a punch up with? Tyson Fury or some fat taxi driver that doesn't work out? You want somebody who's going to be more weakened and debilitated and less motivated, because they're a lot easier to manipulate and control. So that I wonder if that's why a disease like that may be one that is chosen to essentially target people.
Well, it has to be. It's a very stealth weapon for a start. It's difficult to detect for another. Also, the amount of symptoms, like you're saying, is debilitating. There were times. My daughter lived in Manchester, and for many years, over a decade, I had to go and pick her up every weekend. Never missed a weekend. I'm quite a driven guy. People know my research. I'm like that in life. I'm quite a driven guy. I think that helped me through it. I also think it harmed me a little bit as well by ignoring some of the things that were going on. However, that was the way I approached it. But sometimes when I was driving over to drop my daughter off, I'd drop her off and I wouldn't know how to get home. neurologically it affected you that way. Like the onset of, there is like a Lyme, Parkinson's or Alzheimer's part of this as well, where it actually makes you forget things. So I forgot how, for minutes or half an hour, I'd sit in my car wondering how I'm going to get home. I couldn't remember where I lived. So I had to sometimes I had to pre-program the address into my sat nav so I could get home. That's how bad I got.
Wow.
So imagine that with people who possibly aren't spiritually, I won't say strong. I don't mean I'm a Superman or anything like that. But there are people that are, like he's talking about Tyson Fury, for instance. There are people that are physically strong. I know he's had his mental issues as well, and mentally willing to drive themselves. And other people who aren't will just give in. What happens when it happens to one of those people? I've met people like that who come into the clinic. They can't get. They struggle to get to the clinic. They struggle to get there. They struggle to get home. And going back to planning, people ask me to do talks. Even now, I don't go and do talks. I don't want to go away from home where I've got all my things here, if you like. You know, it's not because I'm agoraphobic. It's just that I know sometimes I don't feel right well. Why put myself in that position? Even today, and I feel 90% better than I did 5 or 6 years ago.
So yeah, that's what I'd like to move on to now. Is how have you managed to take yourself from the worst of those times when you couldn't get out of bed and you were struggling with brain fog and chronic fatigue? Well, what have you done to? You mentioned strength of mind, the strength of character, and that spiritual connection to something. But what have you done in terms of the rest of your lifestyle, whether it be your diet, whether it be medication, whether it be alternative healing? Is there anything specific that's really helped you?
There's a lot of things. I mean, I've never been back to the doctor since 2008. So I've never taken any form of pharmaceutical drugs to help me through any of this. So that's one thing. That's that line in the sand there. I went to see a naturopath in 2008. I went to see two, actually. One was a third generation herbalist who I'm still in touch with. And another one was a lady in Huddersfield. And they both pointed out different things, but said the same thing, really. They said I was being basically attacked by parasites. So one of them, a guy called Nick in the northeast, who lives off the land, properly lives off the land. He was out foraging, lives in the middle of a forest, etc. And I thought, I'm going to take notice of this guy. But what really convinced me was I'd never met him before. I met him in Knaresborough. And he looked in my eyes. He said, "You've had a hernia operation, a belly button hernia operation." And I'm thinking, I've never met this guy. He's a hippie-looking character, and he knows I've had a belly button hernia. How does he know that? Because he was an uriologist, unbeknown to me. He could see the lines in my eyes and tell that I'd had an hernia operation. I'm listening to this guy. Yeah. So he told me.
That's a good job interview, that.
Yeah. He passed. And so I did a liver cleanse. The Hulda Clark, if anybody wants to look it up, I suppose that's the derivative of it, where you basically get rid of a load of liver stones, and you do it over a 2-week period of detoxing. And I felt slightly better after that. Some of the symptoms damped down. They didn't particularly go, but I could tell I felt a lot better. And likewise with the lady Trudy, she's no longer with us now. She was a dear friend, but she helped me as well, and my wife through this. She was a naturopath, so that got my head ticking that there was more to health than just listening to a doctor who just wanted to give you pharmaceutical drugs. So I started using Ozone. I bought an Ozone sauna. And for anybody out there who doesn't know what Ozone is, Ozone, if you've got a dog and it comes in on one of those lovely autumn days and it smells really fresh, like fresh air, you'd say it was, that's Ozone. It's been rolling in the grass, picking up ozone from the dew on the grass or the wet grass. And ozone's, as we know, the ozone layer is made in the atmosphere. And it comes down in rain. It's made in waterfalls and things like that. That's why you get that smell from a waterfall. And ozone, if you breathe it in, is highly toxic, so you don't breathe it in. However, it's an amazing thing where it's an antioxidant and a toxin at the same time, if it's used in different ways. So when you sit in a sauna, steam sauna, ozone's put into the steam sauna for about 20 minutes while the water's heating up. And when I got in these saunas, I realised that for the first time, the symptoms went away after about 20 minutes. So while I was sat in there, it was like a utopia. I could get rid of it. I knew I could get rid of my symptoms for a period of time, and it just gave me some time off. So if anybody gets the chance to go in an ozone sauna, I'd say try an ozone sauna. That was probably one of my first things that I tried. It didn't get rid of all my symptoms. I'm not saying that, but it did while I was in the sauna.
Wow. And
it gave me some relief from what I was going through. I bought Rife machines. I was using Rife machines. They worked well. But if we roll on to 2018, it was only when I started doing ozone 10-pass therapies that I noticed a massive change. That's when I noticed the changes happening. So I'd had this thing for nearly 10 years, over 10 years, 12 years or whatever. And ozone 10-pass treatments are, which you should come up, Jaymie, for a treatment. You being a fit lad, the benefits to someone who's healthy is amazing. My friends come and have treatments, and a lot of them are runners or triathletes and things like that. And I know from a weight training perspective, even for somebody like me who's gone through where I've gone, it adds so much strength and endurance to your training for weeks after as well, not just for that moment. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, you should come up and try it. But an ozone 10-pass treatment is, if people want to look it up, it was developed by a doctor in Belgium called Dr. Lehogne. And he used a system called a Herman ozone machine. They're quite an expensive piece of kit. That's what we use in the clinic. Basically, a nurse puts a line in your arm, and there's a bottle, and the blood's drawn out naturally using a vacuum. You don't feel it. It fills the bottle up to about 150 mils, and then a similar amount of ozone is put into that bottle, and then it's infused and put back into yourself. So you basically clean roughly between 1 litre and 1.5 litres of blood as it's going around your system. And you do feel reoxygenated. Your eye colour changes, the whites of your eyes go white, the colour comes out of your eyes. That's the first sign, really, of what's going on. People start talking more while they're having the treatment. Wow. And it's very natural as well. It doesn't feel like you've had 10 coffees. It's not that type of energetic experience. It's more of a spiritual experience.
So what do you get come into the clinic in terms of conditions then to where that benefit?
Well, mainly people with Lyme or autoimmune type issues, because obviously that's where our site's set up for. But for varying different illnesses, some people just come in for wellness because they've read about the. Some people come in for sport as well, you know. So we've had some professional athletes coming in, boxers and things like that, footballers. They come in for that, but it gets rid of a lot of inflammation from the system as well. I'm not saying one treatment works for everybody. Some people it does, but some people, I didn't notice any difference to my health until I had about 7 or 8 treatments. Right. And then I noticed the symptoms didn't just damp down, but they stopped as well. Not all of them. I won't say all of them did. But I don't know whether I'm dealing with the actual symptoms of Lyme now, or the damage it caused, or the other problems that it creates within the system as well. I don't think I'm struggling with Lyme disease anymore. I don't feel that sort of illness anymore.
And on the surface, Lyme disease is something that doesn't go away?
I would say not, no. People say to me, how long does it take to get better? And I say, there is no line, there's no rule of thumb. Some people come in and get a fantastic response. And other people, it takes lots of treatments to get a small response. Right. Everyone's different. I noticed with high doses of vitamin C IVs as well, that they help as well. I did a lot of ozone treatments, IV, and a lot of high dose vitamin C treatments as well. So I'll have 35 grams of vitamin C in an IV with all the B vitamins and magnesium and zinc, things like that, and some amino acids. And I noticed all my respiratory conditions went. I haven't had hay fever for 4 years, which I've had since I was a kid.
I've read them. There's a place down the road from us that does them, but I've not been yet.
Yeah, you should go. I mean, yeah, look, there are good and bad practitioners. I'm not saying we're the world's best, but we are a CQC registered clinic. Now, that means we've had to go through all the government recommendations, which most of it is very bureaucratic, as you can understand. It's like dealing with communist China a lot of the times. A lot of the work you've got to do to get past these CQC, it took us 6 months, by the way, to get past these CQCs about sustainability, about a lot of wokeism in there. What would you do if a transgender person came in to have a treatment? And it's like, just so to open the doors to do treatments, can you imagine the amount of bureaucracy you've got to go through to actually just do that one treatment? It's insane, but we live in an insane world. So,
but you can roll out an untested vaccine to women and children, and everyone.
That's all right
without too much scrutiny, and it causes all this damage, and that's fine. But you want to.
Yeah, that's all right. So we do get to go and talking of the 2020 nonsense. We do get a lot of people that were damaged through that coming through as well. I'm not saying we have great results. We have good results. I'm not saying everything works for everybody. I think anybody that comes on and says this one thing is the only thing that ever works and my thing's the best thing, I think you've got to be wary of that person or organisation, because not everything works for everybody. I've tried loads of different things and not everything worked. So all I supply with my supplements and my treatments at the clinic are things that worked for us.
Yep.
I can only go with what worked for us, what helped us. People say to me, why didn't you use this treatment? And I say, well, one, I've never done it, or two, it didn't work for me. I can't put my name to something that hasn't worked for me. That doesn't mean to say it didn't work for other people. Like hyperbaric chambers, I never got anything from a hyperbaric chamber. And I went in quite a lot of times. My wife did 25 treatments, never got anything from it. Never felt any benefit whatsoever. But that doesn't mean to say it doesn't work for other people.
Yeah, I think that's the case. It's the same with diet, isn't it? People preach one size fits all when there's not one size fits all for anything, really.
No.
Every single body is different. Every single DNA, genetics, everything is slightly different. So therefore, what might work for you won't work for me, and vice versa. If everybody was the same, everyone could do 100 meters in 10 seconds, but they can't.
Yeah, everyone would run like Linford. Maybe not without the lunchbox.
I don't know. If someone shouted there's a lion behind you, I bet everyone would run the quickest they've ever run.
Yeah, they probably would do, yeah.
Fascinating subject to get into at some point. Maybe we could do that again. Is that human potential? How such a small percentage of it we actually tap into? And when you
I think
that flight position, people can summon incredible strength, incredible speed when there's no other choice. Because that's a rabbit hole completely. But I believe that we have been systematically programmed to be limited physically.
Oh, yeah.
Cognitively, and also, we're programmed and conditioned to think in a limited way through the media and the education system. But I don't believe that, this is almost like if we're a biological computer, we're a biological computer with a firewall on it, kind of thing.
If this is the best we can do, then we're not very good, are we? No. So we've definitely been held back. But I also think if this is a eugenics experiment, for instance, there has to be a positive side to it. So why would they carry out eugenics experiments like this, like Lyme disease and all the other things? One's for longevity and one's for what you said, the human potential. Yep. So there has to be a positive side. We're talking about the negative side, the effects it has on people that it makes ill or holds them back in life, or the potential. But there has to be a yin and a yang somewhere. And so the people that are hidden away somewhere, probably in some sort of lab, that can, like the Fantastic Four, for argument's sake, can present these unique human potential, we will never get to see. A bit like the combustion engine. It's never improved in my lifetime, your lifetime, or even the last 50 years. I remember in the 80s, I think it was Volkswagen, were showing off that you could put a gallon of petrol in it and do 50 miles. Now, if that was in the 80s, 30, 40 years on, it should be doing 1,000 miles if that was... But now they don't want you to have a petrol car because it causes too much, for global climate warming change. So the potential is always limited, isn't it? Everything's limited.
100%. If we're at the pinnacle of human evolution, then, I don't buy that for a second.
No.
Don't buy that for a second. In lots of different ways, I don't buy it for a second. And there's so many rabbit holes to go into on those subjects, which we could...
I've got so many notes on Yeah. I've got so many notes and stuff like that. But also, where was I going now? I remember thinking when I was in business, if this is all I've got to offer this place, then I'm a waste of space. So maybe I had to get Lyme disease to help other people who were ill. I don't know. Certainly didn't do it for the money for that side of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a conversation I have with myself most mornings is you're a waste of space, get out of bed. I finally had that this morning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys, having met you, you're very driven. You know, it's nice to see. You know, when we're down there, there's some good energy down there. You could feel it.
Thanks. We try. We're just good at hiding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for people that have been listening that have been interested in what you have to say and want to learn more, and maybe in the UK want to come and have a treatment, where can people find you?
Well, we're in the north. I don't know if you get by my accent that I'm from the north of England. We're in Halifax. So it's Health Bunker. If you want any information, it's healthbunker.co.uk. That's our website. We're just actually building a new one. So that'll be 2 or 3 months away. That was built in 2018 when we started. The website started as a blog, actually. So it's been sort of made into a clinic website. It needs updating. So we're starting with a new website over the next 2 or 3 months. We've also got a supplement business. We've got some great supplements on there that have helped me and my wife. I know I would say that, but they are. I've sourced them myself. The chap that I talked about, the urologist, his son has a supplement manufacturing company, so I use them because I trust what they buy from a herbal perspective and a vitamin perspective, because they sell the products themselves as well. And so that's info at healthbunker.co.uk. You can email us on if you want any information.
Okay, awesome. I'll put all those links in the description for people to head over and get more information. Thanks for joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and I'll definitely take you up on that offer of coming up and having a treatment.
Whenever you want to. Yeah, awesome. Just let me know.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah, okay, mate.
Cheers, thank you very much for tuning in tonight, everybody, to Health Code. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode. As I said, I'll put the links in the description if you want more information on Dom and the Health Bunker. And I'll be back again next week with another great guest to bring you some inspiring and empowering health information. Until then, have a great week. Bye for now.